Welcome, dear listener, to History at Bedtime. Tonight, we'll step quietly into a world of ambition, conquest, and quiet wonder, where distant lands stretch endlessly, and the scent of campfires mingles with the soft rhythm of marching soldiers. A world where a young Macedonian prince would grow to shape history, moving through cities, mountains, and deserts with a determination that still echoes across time. A gentle warning: this story may make the past feel startlingly vivid. You probably won't make it through this day without feeling transported to another age, and that's exactly the point. Let yourself drift. Let curiosity soften the edges of the present. Before we go further, leave a comment with your location and local time. It's a quiet way to connect our imaginations across the world. And if you enjoy letting history unfold slowly, soothingly, and curiously, please like this video and subscribe. Here, there's no rush, only stories waiting to carry you gently through time. Take a deep, calming breath. Let your shoulders relax. Let the day slip softly away. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. Tonight, we follow Alexander the Great, wandering through the bustling streets of Pella, across the rocky passes of Asia Minor, and onto distant plains and rivers where empires rise and fall. We'll feel the quiet moments between battles, the subtle choices that shaped kingdoms, and the human stories behind legendary conquests, letting the rhythm of history lull us gently onward. The sun is setting over Pella, painting the sky in soft oranges and purples. The streets are quiet now, the kind of silence that suggests a world at rest. Well, almost at rest. You hear the faint clink of metal as the last few blacksmiths finish their work for the day, the quiet rustling of wheat in the breeze, and the low murmur of people chatting in the distance. It's the perfect time to settle in, to let the slow, familiar rhythm of ancient life wash over you. You can almost taste the dust in the air, thick with history. There's something about this evening that makes you feel as though you're walking just slightly out of sync with time itself. You're here, yet not quite here. It's like you've stumbled into the past by accident. And trust me, you probably won't make it through this day. There, in the heart of Macedonia, under the warm glow of the setting sun, a child is born. He is named Alexander, and in a few short decades, he will be known to the world as the Great. But for now, he's just a baby, blissfully unaware of the future that awaits him. You find yourself standing near his childhood home, a modest, stone-built house tucked within the streets of Pella. The house is humble but well kept. You can smell the earthy scent of olive oil mixed with the faint smell of cooking meats. It's a simple life, yet there's something in the air that hints at greatness. Even now, perhaps it's the way his father, King Philip II, struts around with that look in his eyes, the kind that says, "I'm a man who's going to change history." You know the type, don't you? Maybe you've met someone like him at a party, someone who talks like they've already written their own biography. In truth, Philip's ambition is vast, and not everyone in his court likes it. The rumors swirl. Some whisper that Philip's too focused on military conquests, that he's shaping his son to be a ruthless warrior before he's even old enough to appreciate the beauty of a peaceful sunset like this one. There's a strange tension between love and strategy in the way Philip raises Alexander, the kind of tension that will later give rise to a young man driven by ambition and an insatiable hunger for power. But we'll get to that later. But for now, let's pause and enjoy the quiet. The scent of honeyed wine drifts by as a merchant passes, his cart filled with jars of preserves, his donkey's hooves tapping along the cobblestones. You can hear children laughing nearby, playing games you can barely understand, and the faint sound of an old woman muttering about something to do with fate. She's probably right about that. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the square, you can't help but wonder, what was this day like for young Alexander? Maybe he was lying in his crib, blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding outside. Or perhaps, already at a young age, he was soaking in every word of wisdom from his famous tutor, Aristotle, who would soon arrive in Pella, bringing with him scrolls, books, and theories that would shape Alexander's worldview forever. Aristotle would teach him about philosophy, science, and the Greek gods, but not necessarily the kind of gods you'd want to pray to for a quiet, peaceful life. These gods were more chaotic, and so too would be the life that Alexander would lead. Historians still debate whether young Alexander's education had a lasting effect on his later military strategies. Did Aristotle's lessons in ethics and philosophy truly shape the way Alexander treated the people he conquered? Or was it just the fire of youthful arrogance? Some say the answer lies in the military campaigns that would follow, but we'll see. For now, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. You stand there, just outside that simple house, feeling the weight of the centuries around you. The world is about to change, and you're here to witness it, piece by piece. With each breath, the scene around you comes alive, the distant hum of life in ancient Macedonia, where everything feels like it's unfolding just beneath the surface. And with that, we turn the page and continue the journey. It's a few years later now. The world feels a little more intense, a little more alive. You hear the clatter of shields being tested against each other, and the sound of horses stomping in the royal stables. King Philip, Alexander's father, has been busy, you see. His campaigns against the Greek city-states are gaining momentum, and the tension between peace and war hangs like a thick, smoky cloud over the land. You walk along the edge of the palace grounds now, where soldiers drill in the dusty sunlight. Their iron armor gleams in the fading light of the day, and their movements are precise, like clockwork. Some are already whispering about Philip's incredible ability to build an army, but not everyone is so enthusiastic. There's a growing sense of unease, whispers of a king who has expanded his empire too far, too fast. But Alexander, he's still young, watching, learning from his father's every move. He knows that one day this will all be his. And maybe, just maybe, he's already dreaming of a bigger empire than even his father could fathom. After all, that's what his tutors tell him, isn't it? He's destined for greatness. But what kind of greatness? Exactly, you wonder, standing here in the shadow of the Father. Is it the kind that's built on blood, or is it something else? Alexander isn't sure yet, but he will be soon enough. For now, you watch as he moves through the ranks of soldiers, his posture straight, his eyes calculating. He's learning how to command, how to lead, and maybe, just maybe, how to be the kind of king that legends are made of. As the day wears on, you notice something strange. The quiet, it's not the stillness of peace, but the kind that comes before a storm. You can feel it in the air, as if the very earth is holding its breath. The kind of silence that happens just before a decision is made. You can almost hear the wheels of history turning. Philip, it seems, isn't just building an empire. He's building a legacy that will either inspire or haunt his son. Historians still debate whether Alexander's early admiration for his father turned into resentment once he realized he would always be compared to him. Was Alexander seeking his own path to immortality, or did he just want to surpass his father at any cost? You can't help but feel a bit of sympathy for Alexander now, growing up with a father who is both a great conqueror and a massive, looming figure. Must have been complicated. And yet, despite it all, Alexander does what any young man would do in his shoes. He takes the reins, setting his own course, and soon enough, he will leave Pella behind, setting out on the journey that will forever change the map of the ancient world. The year is 336 BC. You feel the heat of the sun just beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long, dramatic shadows over the royal palace of Pella. The noise of the city around you has quieted down into a low murmur, but the tension in the air is palpable. There's a whisper here, a murmur there. Something's happening, something big. It's almost as though the very earth is holding its breath. It's in this charged atmosphere that Alexander's life takes a turn, as if the universe has decided that it's time for him to step up. His father, King Philip II, has been assassinated. One moment, he was leading the Macedonian army to new heights, conquering city-states and expanding his power. The next, he's gone, struck down by an assassin's blade. The assassination, though shocking, sets the stage for Alexander's rise to the throne. You're standing in the palace now, feeling the weight of that sudden change. Everything seems to pause as the news spreads through the halls. You see Alexander, still in his early 20s, standing tall as he absorbs the reality of his father's death. This moment, this painful yet defining moment, will shape the man who will soon be known as the most famous conqueror the world has ever seen. It's hard to ignore the irony. You stand in a place where power, in all its ruthless form, has changed hands. But this is no time for sorrow, not in the eyes of Alexander. His father might have been the force of nature who conquered half of Greece, but it's now his turn to lead, to prove that his legacy will not die with Philip. The winds have shifted, and they're pushing Alexander forward. You can almost hear the call to arms in the distance, echoing through the halls, the clashing of swords, the rumble of horses' hooves. He has no choice but to rise to the occasion. What's interesting about this moment is how little it seems to faze Alexander. It's almost as if the idea of leading has been drummed into him from the very beginning. There's a sense of inevitability in the air, the knowledge that he was always meant to be the one to wear the crown, to take the empire further than his father could. As you stand there, it's almost as though you can feel the weight of Alexander's thoughts. How will he take control? How will he manage the empire his father built? Will he make the same choices Philip made, or will he strike out on a path of his own? For now, all that's clear is that the mantle of leadership is now his to bear, and he's not about to let it slip. Historians still debate how quickly Alexander consolidated power after his father's assassination. Was it a smooth transition, or did he face challenges from within his own court? Some suggest that Alexander quickly eliminated rivals, but we'll never know the full truth. It's one of those moments in history where the details are shrouded in mystery. As the night settles in, you can feel the weight of history surrounding you. The grand halls, the towering columns. This is the birth of a legend. It's as though you're walking through time, a witness to something much larger than any individual. Alexander is about to become the force that will reshape the ancient world. And you, well, you're just a quiet observer for now, watching it all unfold. A few months have passed. The world outside the palace has become a battlefield, and Alexander is no longer the quiet observer. The familiar sounds of the Macedonian court have been replaced by the clatter of soldiers preparing for war. You stand at the edge of the royal camps now, surrounded by the bustling activity of soldiers, merchants, and engineers, all preparing for a journey that will stretch far beyond what anyone could have imagined. The air is thick with dust, and the sounds of metal clinking and leather creaking fill the air as Alexander's army prepares to march east toward the mighty Persian Empire. It's a sight to behold. Honestly, you see hundreds of soldiers, their armor gleaming under the midday sun as they move with a rhythm that's been honed by years of training. They're not just soldiers, though. They're Alexander's soldiers. They trust him. They know he's the man who will lead them to victory. And if you're being honest with yourself, you kind of feel like you're ready to join them. It's almost as if you can hear the thundering hooves of war horses in the distance. You watch as Alexander rides through the camp, surveying his men with a calculating eye. There's no doubt about it. He's a born leader. He carries himself like a king, but not in the pompous, overbearing way some monarchs do. No, Alexander has a presence that draws people in. It's a kind of quiet confidence, the kind that makes you believe that whatever he sets his mind to, he will achieve. But let's not forget, this is no simple military campaign. This is a journey that will take Alexander's army across mountains, through deserts, and into the heart of the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire is the largest and most powerful in the ancient world, and Alexander is about to test its might. Historians still debate the significance of Alexander's early decision to march into Persia. Was it a calculated move to avenge the death of his father, or was he simply following the example set by the great conquerors before him? Some say that Alexander was driven by a deep personal desire for glory, while others argue that he saw Persia as a threat that needed to be neutralized before it could challenge Macedon. Either way, the choice was made and the campaign began. As you walk through the camp, you notice the soldiers are not just preparing for war, they're also preparing for what lies ahead. There are scribes writing letters to their families, merchants trading in supplies, and soldiers sharpening their swords and shields. You get the sense that this is more than just a military expedition. It's a journey into the unknown. There's an eerie sense of anticipation in the air, the kind that only comes before something monumental. You can't help but wonder how Alexander feels about all this. Is he excited, nervous, maybe a little of both? The sheer scale of what he's about to undertake must be overwhelming, and yet he's calm, almost eerily calm, as though he's already seen it all play out in his mind. Maybe he has. Maybe this is just another chapter in a story that's been written for him from the very beginning. The morning sun is harsh against the horizon as you follow the trail of dust kicked up by the advancing army. The sound of marching feet, the steady rhythm of hooves, and the occasional shout from a commanding officer create a symphony of anticipation. You're no longer standing in the quiet, contemplative calm of Pella. No, you've crossed into another world entirely now. One where time moves faster, where the air smells of iron and sweat, and the future is uncertain. As Alexander's army marches forward, there's a tangible shift in the atmosphere. You feel it in the way the soldiers move, their faces set with determination. There's no turning back now. The gates of Macedonia are behind you, and the sprawling lands of Persia lie ahead. You can see the first signs of the Persian Empire in the distance, a patchwork of cities and villages that will soon feel the weight of Alexander's ambition. This isn't just an invasion, it's the beginning of a new era, an era in which a young Macedonian king will face the might of one of the largest empires the world has ever known. You're standing at the edge of the army now, watching as Alexander rides ahead, his former lone figure against the vast open plains. His eyes are focused, scanning the horizon, and his posture, always so straight, so poised, suggests that he's already visualizing the battle ahead. He's not just a king, but a strategist, a conqueror, and above all, a man who knows the stakes of the journey he's on. There's no room for mistakes here. The fate of an empire is in his hands. As you stand there, a strange thought crosses your mind. What is it that drives him? What compels a young man, barely in his 20s, to lead an army across the known world, to challenge the mighty Persian Empire with nothing but his own charisma and the military genius of his father's army? It's a question that historians have pondered for centuries. Some suggest that Alexander was driven by a deep need for glory, to carve his name into the annals of history. Others argue that his ambition was personal, perhaps a desire to surpass the shadow of his father, Philip II, and to create a legacy that would stand on its own. There's also the fact that Alexander was taught by Aristotle, one of the greatest minds in Greek history. Under Aristotle's tutelage, Alexander was exposed to the great works of philosophy, science, and history. Perhaps it was this education that fueled his desire for conquest as he sought to bring the knowledge of Greek culture to the farthest corners of the world. Historians still debate the full extent of Aristotle's influence on Alexander's decisions. Some say it shaped his governance, while others suggest that his military strategies were more instinctual than intellectual. Regardless, you can't help but feel a sense of awe as you watch him. He's not just marching towards Persia, he's marching towards greatness. His eyes are set on Babylon, on the ancient cities of the East and beyond. The road ahead is long and the challenges are many, but Alexander seems unfazed. It's almost as though he has already convinced himself of victory. The journey isn't without its trials. Along the way, the army faces harsh weather, difficult terrain, and the constant pressure of maintaining supply lines. Yet every day, the soldiers march on, their feet sinking into the earth, their minds focused on the task ahead. You can hear the murmurs of the men as they talk about Alexander, wondering whether he is truly the leader they think him to be, or whether his ambition will ultimately lead them into ruin. But despite the whispers, there is a prevailing sense of loyalty. These men believe in Alexander. They trust him, and that trust, more than any weapon or battle strategy, is what will carry them through. As the army moves through the gusty roads, the landscape begins to change. The dry, arid land of Macedonia gives way to more fertile soil as they approach the Persian border. You notice the occasional village along the way with people who stare warily at the approaching army. Some wave, some retreat indoors. The people here, you can sense, have never seen the likes of Alexander's army. They've heard the stories, no doubt, of a young king with a reputation for ruthlessness and brilliance alike. How will they react when the conqueror arrives on their doorstep? Historians still argue over the treatment of conquered peoples by Alexander. Some claim that he was a liberator, spreading Greek culture and fostering alliances. Others argue that his conquests were marked by brutality, with entire cities falling before his might. Perhaps, as with all things in history, the truth lies somewhere in between. One thing is certain: when Alexander comes to a city, it will not remain the same. Not now, not ever. As you stand there, watching the procession move forward, you realize something important. You're no longer just an observer. You're part of the story now. You can feel the weight of history pressing down on you. It's a strange sensation, as though the past and present are merging into one. There's no going back to the quiet streets of Pella. The journey has begun, and there's no turning back. The first battle is always the hardest. You can feel it in the air, thick with the tension of what's to come. The soldiers are ready, their armor gleaming in the morning light. You can hear the familiar clink of swords being sharpened, the crack of whips as the cavalry lines up, and the low murmur of prayers being muttered under breath. This is it, the first step into the unknown. The battle ahead is at the river Granicus, a key strategic point in the Persian Empire. The Persian forces have gathered, ready to face the advancing Macedonian army. There's a palpable sense of nervous excitement among the soldiers. Everyone knows that this battle will set the tone for the entire campaign. If Alexander wins, it will signal to the world that he is a force to be reckoned with. If he loses, it could spell disaster for everything he's worked for. You can see the tension on Alexander's face as he surveys the battlefield. He's calm, almost too calm, as he gives the orders to his generals. His troops are ready, and his tactics are already in motion. He knows that the key to victory will be in outsmarting the Persian forces, using speed and precision to overwhelm them. As the battle unfolds before you, you can't help but be struck by the sheer scale of it all. The sound of clashing metal fills the air, punctuated by the cries of soldiers and the thundering hooves of war horses. The battlefield is a chaotic blur of movement, a swirling mix of dust, blood, and determination. Yet, through it all, there's Alexander leading his men with unshakable resolve. The Macedonian forces charge, their lines moving as one, and within hours, the Persians are retreating. The battle is over. The victory is complete. Alexander has secured his first taste of triumph. Historians still debate the tactical brilliance of Alexander at the Battle of Granicus. Was it his superior strategy or the sheer might of his army that won the day? Some argue it was a combination of both. Either way, the message was clear. Alexander was a conqueror, and the Persian Empire was on notice. As the dust settles and the army begins to regroup, there's a moment of quiet. You stand there, surrounded by the remnants of battle. It's strange how quickly the world can change. One moment, you're on the edge of uncertainty, and the next, you're standing victorious, watching as history is made before your very eyes. The days blur together now, each one indistinguishable from the last as Alexander's army marches deeper into Persian territory. The journey is grueling. The weather shifts between the blistering heat of the desert and the sudden, biting chill of the highlands. But still, they march, step after step, day after day, driven by the belief that they are on the cusp of something monumental. You walk alongside them, feeling the rhythmic thud of boots on earth, the occasional jingle of armor, and the low hum of soldiers discussing the future. You can hear the distant chatter of men, stories from home being exchanged with every footfall. They talk about their families, their lands, and the future they dream of. But none of them speak too much about the king they follow. Perhaps it's out of respect. Perhaps it's because there's little left to say. Alexander's actions have already spoken volumes. The Macedonian king has proven himself in battle, and his men have learned to trust him, even if they don't fully understand the motives driving him. But for now, your journey brings you to the coastal city of Tyre, a city that has stood for centuries, a bustling center of trade, known for its impressive fortifications and its strategic location. It's the kind of place that seems impervious to attack, seemingly untouchable. You can already sense it in the air, the city's proud defiance, its deep-rooted confidence in its own security. But Tyre is about to learn that Alexander does not believe in the concept of untouchable. You're standing at the edge of the city now, watching as the massive stone walls rise before you. The sea crashes gently against the shores, while the sound of Tyrian merchants haggling with customers fills the air. Yet, there's a nervous energy among the soldiers now, a collective unease that you can't quite shake. They know this won't be easy. Historians still debate what Alexander's ultimate goal was in Tyre, whether it was the city's riches or the desire to establish control over the eastern Mediterranean. Regardless, the siege of Tyre would become one of the most impressive and brutal military feats of his career. As the army settles into position, you can see the preparations begin. A fleet of ships arrives with materials to begin the siege. The Macedonian army is not known for its naval prowess, but they've come prepared, bringing with them skilled engineers and laborers. The city's great walls, standing high above the sea, seem almost impossible to breach. Yet, Alexander has already devised a plan that will test the limits of engineering, patience, and willpower. Over the course of the next several months, the siege of Tyre will unfold with a combination of military ingenuity and sheer determination. The Macedonians will build a causeway, a massive stone bridge leading from the mainland to the city, bringing their siege weapons right up to the walls. You watch as the army works tirelessly, stone by stone, day after day, the sounds of hammers and chisels echoing across the waters. There are setbacks, of course, ships trying to destroy the causeway, the Tyrians defending their city with fervor. But still, the Macedonian forces press on, and you can feel the collective determination in the air. There's a certain desperation among the defenders now. The longer the siege drags on, the more their once proud city begins to feel like a trap, a beautiful cage they can't escape. Inside, there's a mix of pride, fear, and confusion. You can almost hear the conversations that might be happening behind those high walls. We've withstood so much, surely we can hold out longer. But as the causeway inches closer and closer to the walls, that certainty begins to fade. The city's time is running out. And then, finally, after months of relentless siege, Alexander's forces break through. The walls fall, the city's gates open, and the once proud Tyre is taken. It's a victory, yes, but one that comes with a heavy toll. Historians still debate the aftermath of Tyre. Was the city spared, its people treated with mercy, or was there brutal retribution for their defiance? Accounts vary. Some suggest that Alexander was merciful, while others tell of mass executions and enslaved survivors. It seems that even in victory, Alexander was still capable of making decisions that would haunt future generations. As you stand there, watching the sun set over the once great city of Tyre, you feel the weight of Alexander's actions. He is building an empire. Yes, but at what cost? There's something about this victory that feels hollow, as if it's not enough to simply conquer. There must also be a message sent. Tyre was a bold statement, a lesson to any city that might consider defying Alexander's will. The message is clear. There is no room for resistance. Alexander will not be stopped. The sky turns a deep red as night begins to fall, and you find yourself lost in thought. The world is changing, and it's hard not to feel the weight of those changes. Alexander's journey is only beginning, but already the echo of his actions stretches far and wide. With Tyre behind him, Alexander presses forward, his gaze now fixed on the land of Egypt. It's strange, isn't it, how quickly one victory fades into the next. It's as though Alexander is always looking forward, always planning the next conquest, the next triumph. And yet, even the great conqueror can't escape the ancient pull of Egypt. You find yourself walking through the vast, rolling sand dunes of the Egyptian desert, the air heavy with the scent of salt and heat. It's a different kind of beauty here, one that feels ancient and timeless, like the land itself holds the secrets of 1,000 generations. The army marches on, and the sun is relentless, beating down upon the soldiers as they press forward, their faces coated with dust, their eyes squinting against the glare. When Alexander arrives in Egypt, it's almost as though he's stepping into another world. The Egyptians, for their part, welcome him after all. They've seen the great empires of the past rise and fall. The Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians. and they know the power of change. Alexander is seen not only as a conqueror, but also as a liberator, someone who will free them from Persian rule and restore their ancient glory. The priests in the temples speak of Alexander as a divine figure, a god in the flesh, sent by the gods to restore Egypt's greatness. It's here, in Egypt, that Alexander seeks something more than military conquest. He seeks guidance from the gods themselves. You walk with him now as he visits the oracle of Amun at the Siwa oasis. It's a long journey, but you can feel the anticipation in the air, the belief that something important is about to happen. The oracle of Amun, known for its cryptic prophecies, will offer Alexander a glimpse into his future, or so the legend goes. Historians still debate what exactly Alexander was told by the oracle. Some say the priest at the temple declared him the son of Amun, affirming his divine status, while others suggest the oracle offered a more cryptic, ambiguous message. Whatever was said, Alexander took it to heart. The message would serve to solidify his sense of destiny, his belief that he was chosen by the gods themselves to conquer the world. As you stand at the edge of the desert, the wind sweeping across the sand dunes, you can't help but wonder, did Alexander believe the oracle's words? Did they truly fuel his desire to conquer? Or was it merely a tool to justify his actions in the eyes of his soldiers and the world? It's one of history's great questions, and the answer, like so many others in Alexander's life, remains elusive. But for now, as the sun dips low on the horizon, you can't help but feel a sense of peace here in Egypt, amid the ancient ruins and vast sands. It's a place where history feels weighty, where every step you take is a step through time. Alexander is moving forward, yes, but here in Egypt, he is reminded of the greater forces that guide him, forces beyond his control, and perhaps in this moment, that's all he needs. The months slip by. The days melt into one another like the endless stretches of sand in Egypt. After visiting the oracle of Amun, Alexander is not just a conqueror anymore. He is something more. A god in the eyes of many, or at least a man whose power has been divinely sanctioned. The Egyptian priests have given him what he wanted, a divine title, a godly status. You can almost feel the weight of it as you walk beside him, feeling the subtle shift in the air. He is no longer just a king. He is a king anointed by the gods themselves. You follow him now through the grand halls of the newly founded city of Alexandria, named after himself. The city is bustling with life, merchants shouting over the noise, traders haggling over rare spices, and the distant clang of construction as new buildings rise from the dust. Alexandria is to be the jewel of the ancient world, a city where Greek culture and Egyptian traditions will blend seamlessly. It's a symbol of Alexander's vision for the future, a place where knowledge, culture, and power converge. As you walk through the city's streets, you can almost see the ancient future coming to life. The Library of Alexandria is in the works. Scholars from all over the world are starting to arrive, and the city is rapidly becoming a hub of learning and trade. But beneath all the grand plans and the glittering future lies something more, a belief in the divine right of kings that Alexander has now fully embraced. Historians still debate whether Alexander's divine status truly influenced his later actions, or whether it was merely a clever political move to solidify his control over the diverse peoples of his empire. Was Alexander the Great genuinely convinced of his own divinity, or was it all part of his grand strategy to unite a vast empire? Some say it was a mix of both. He used his newfound godly status as a tool to rally his troops and silence any dissent, but there was a part of him that truly believed it. Alexander's belief in his divinity is tested soon enough. As he moves on from Egypt, he continues his campaigns across Persia, heading deeper into the heart of the empire. The farther he goes, the greater the myth of his godhood grows. Everywhere he goes, his troops cheer, his people revere him, and his enemies cower at the thought of facing him. The legend of Alexander spreads like wildfire, and the man becomes larger than life, a living god whose name will be spoken in hushed tones for centuries to come. Yet, as the battles grow fiercer and the empire grows ever more vast, there's a nagging thought that crosses your mind. How long can a man be both mortal and god? The weight of divinity, even one that is self-imposed, must begin to crack under pressure eventually. You can see it in Alexander's eyes. There's a hunger there, a desire for something more, something that only a god can attain. But the cost of this belief is becoming clearer with each passing day. As the army marches onward, Alexander's drive becomes more and more apparent. He's not just conquering land, he's chasing something intangible. Perhaps it's immortality, perhaps it's the need to be remembered forever. His ambition knows no bounds. You see it in the way he interacts with his soldiers, how he can inspire them to do the impossible, how they follow him with a loyalty that borders on fanaticism. And yet, there's something unsettling about this all-consuming ambition. It's as if the legend of Alexander is beginning to eclipse the man himself. But for now, in the warm, golden glow of Alexandria, all seems calm. The city, bustling with energy and life, serves as a brief respite from the chaos of the battlefield. The sound of distant waves breaking against the shore, the smell of fresh bread wafting through the streets, the sight of the city stretching out before you. It feels like a dream, yet you can't shake the thought that it's all just part of the machine that Alexander has built, a machine that is moving inexorably forward toward the unknown. You can feel the shift in the air now, the crackling tension that precedes the next great chapter in Alexander's journey. The armies have crossed into Persia, and the terrain is changing once again. Gone are the warm sands of Egypt, replaced by the rugged, rocky hills that lead toward the heart of the Persian Empire. The dust hangs thick in the air as the army moves forward, and you can see the determination in every soldier's eyes. There's no turning back now. The Persian Empire, once the undisputed ruler of the known world, stands in front of them like a colossal fortress. It stretches from the Mediterranean Sea all the way to the Indus River. It's vast, it's powerful, and it seems, for all its size, to be on the verge of collapse. The Persians, under King Darius III, have gathered an army to stop Alexander's advance, but you can feel the uncertainty among their ranks. There's fear in the air, a fear that Alexander is unstoppable. And if there's one thing Alexander feeds off of, it's fear. You follow the Macedonian army as it moves toward the battlefield. The soldiers are ready, their weapons polished, and their shields gleaming in the light of the setting sun. The air is thick with the promise of battle, and you can sense the adrenaline building. It's the kind of atmosphere where time seems to slow down. You can feel it in your bones. The clash of civilizations is about to happen, and you are standing on the precipice of it all. The battle that is about to unfold will be one of the most decisive in history, the Battle of Gaugamela. It will be a showdown between Alexander and Darius, two men who have come to represent the old world and the new. The Persian king commands a massive army, but Alexander's forces are smaller, more disciplined, and more willing to fight for a cause that goes beyond mere survival. Historians still debate the tactical genius of the Battle of Gaugamela. Some say that it was Alexander's ability to outmaneuver Darius on the battlefield that won the day. Others argue that it was sheer luck. Either way, the outcome is undeniable. Darius is defeated, and the Persian Empire is effectively broken. You stand at the edge of the battlefield, watching as the dust settles, the cries of battle fade, and the victorious Macedonian soldiers begin to regroup. It's over. The Persian Empire is no more, and Alexander's name will go down in history as the man who conquered it all. But even as the soldiers celebrate, you can't help but feel the weight of what has just happened. This is more than a victory. This is a turning point. Alexander has achieved something that no man has ever done before. And as the sun sets on the battlefield, you can't help but wonder, what will he do next? What kind of empire will he create from the ashes of Persia? And most importantly, how long can one man sustain this kind of power before it begins to consume him entirely? For now, the answer remains elusive, but one thing is clear. The world has just changed forever, and Alexander the Great is at the center of it all. Section 11. The Crown of Persia. You've seen Alexander win battles before, but this moment feels different. As the sun rises over the broken Persian Empire, you can sense it in the air. A new dawn is breaking. The army is still jubilant, the sounds of celebration echoing in the air, but there's something heavier now, something more reflective. You walk through the camp as soldiers eagerly share stories of the victory, their faces alight with triumph. They talk of Darius, the Persian king, who fled the battlefield in a panicked retreat. You can hear the sense of disbelief in their voices. Darius was supposed to be invincible, yet here they are, standing on the ruins of his empire, with nothing left but victory in their hands. But as you walk deeper into the heart of Alexander's camp, you begin to notice a different energy. There's a quietness among the higher-ranking officers, a tension that lies beneath the surface of all this triumph. The victory is undeniable, but it is not without its consequences. Darius, despite his retreat, is still alive, and Alexander knows that he has to deal with him, if not for his own legacy, then for the stability of the empire he's just conquered. The Persian Empire is vast, and while the Battle of Gaugamela may have broken its military might, the heart of Persia is still standing. full of riches, influence, and political power as Alexander rides into the Persian capital of Persepolis. You can feel the weight of his victory. The city, though damaged by the war, still stands as a testament to the wealth and grandeur of the Persian kings. The ornate columns rise high into the sky. The gates are decorated with intricate carvings, and the smell of incense lingers in the air. But Alexander's entry into Persepolis is not the celebration of a conqueror's triumph that you might expect. There's no grand parade or lavish feast. Instead, it is a quiet, almost somber affair. You can see it in Alexander's eyes as he rides through the gates of the city. There is no joy here, no elation, only a sense of duty and perhaps a touch of uncertainty. He has conquered Persia, but he now finds himself at a crossroads. What is a king to do once he has taken it all? Is there anything left to conquer? Or has the world already been claimed? Historians still debate Alexander's intentions in Persepolis. Was he truly seeking to unite the Greek and Persian worlds? Or was this just another step in his ever-expanding empire? Some argue that his burning of Persepolis was an act of revenge for the Persian sack of Athens during the Greco-Persian Wars, while others suggest that it was a symbolic gesture meant to mark the end of the Persian Empire. As the fire consumes the grand palace of Persepolis, you can feel the heat in the air, the crackling of flames rising high above the city. The once mighty center of Persian power is reduced to ash, and as the flames flicker out, you sense something important has shifted. Alexander is no longer just a conqueror. He is an empire baiter, a king who will need to make choices that will determine the future of his newfound world. But for now, as he watches the city burn, it feels like an end to the old world and the beginning of something entirely new. The fire at Persepolis has smoldered down to a slow, smoking ruin behind you as Alexander leads his army eastward, deeper into the heart of the Persian Empire. The journey is long, and you can feel it in the weariness of the soldiers around you. The air, once crisp and dry in the desert plains, now holds the faint humidity of the distant east. With every step, the geography changes, the land shifting from the dry plains of Persia to the lush green fields of what is now modern-day Afghanistan. But the landscape, like the soldiers, is tired. They've been marching for months, if not years, and there's a sense of quiet resignation settling over the army. You feel the weight of Alexander's decisions more acutely now. The further east they march, the less certain the victory feels. The soldiers, once eager and enthusiastic, now begin to murmur among themselves, their faces etched with doubt. The further they travel, the more unfamiliar the terrain becomes. It's one thing to conquer an empire with familiar lands and enemies, but it's something else entirely to cross into a world so distant, so unknown. You can hear the whispers in the ranks. The soldiers are starting to question whether it's worth it. They've already defeated the might of Persia, and now they're moving into lands that seem to stretch endlessly, with no end in sight. You feel the pull of exhaustion yourself, the weight of the endless march pressing down on you like a heavy blanket. At the front of the line, Alexander rides ahead, leading the army as though he's never been tired a day in his life. His gaze is fixed, always looking forward, his face unreadable. It's as though he can't allow himself the luxury of doubt. To show weakness now would be to undo everything he's built. He has led them this far, and there is no turning back. The soldiers grumble as they march through the rugged terrain. They complain about the endless heat, the food shortages, the distance, but Alexander listens to none of it. Instead, he pushes them forward, promising that their victory will be worth the cost. We march to the ends of the earth, to the very gates of India itself, he tells them, and for some reason, they believe him. Historians often focus on this point in Alexander's campaign as the turning point, when his soldiers' faith in him begins to waver. It's hard to say whether they were tired of the endless war, or if they simply couldn't fathom another conquest. Some claim that Alexander's refusal to turn back was an act of greatness, a determination to finish what he started. Others argue that it was the beginning of his undoing, the moment when his thirst for glory overtook his ability to understand the limits of his own men. As you walk beside the army, you notice how each step feels heavier, how the distant sound of marching soldiers becomes more muffled as the miles pile on. The once fearsome army, full of youthful energy, is beginning to look worn. Their eyes, once alight with enthusiasm, are now clouded with fatigue and doubt. Alexander may have been able to conquer Persia, but the true challenge lies ahead, in the uncharted lands of the East, where his legacy will either be cemented or fall apart. The road east is not just a physical journey, it is a journey of leadership, a test of Alexander's ability to keep his empire intact, to hold the loyalty of the men who followed him all this way. The true cost of conquest is not just measured in the victories won, but in the toll it takes on those who walk beside you. And in that quiet, uncertain moment, you can feel that the greatest challenge is still ahead. The sun is relentless as you march alongside the Macedonian army, the humid air weighing heavily on your shoulders. It's a strange feeling now, the long, monotonous trek through the lands that stretch before you, endlessly vast and foreign. The soldiers are weary, some almost lost in their exhaustion. The rhythm of their steps has slowed, and the murmurs of discontent have grown louder. They are beginning to question the wisdom of pushing into the lands of India, a place that seems as unreachable as it is mysterious. But Alexander, ever the resolute leader, will not waver. His gaze is as fixed as ever, his belief in his destiny unshaken. As the army pushes forward, rumors begin to swirl about the forces awaiting them at the banks of the Hydaspes River, a great waterway that stands as a natural barrier to the further expansion of Alexander's empire. Across that river, waiting for him, is King Porus, a fierce Indian ruler with an army that rivals Alexander's in both size and strength. It's a moment that feels almost like fate. You can sense it now. The confrontation is inevitable. The tension in the air is thick, like the calm before a storm. As you approach the river, the landscape changes once again. The dry, open plains give way to the fertile, lush land near the banks of the Hydaspes. The sound of rushing water grows louder as you near the river's edge, and there's an unmistakable sense of finality in the air. This river will not only divide two armies, it will divide history itself. You watch As Alexander studies the terrain, his eyes are calculating, his mind racing with plans. He knows that the Hydaspes is no ordinary river. It's wide, deep, and fast-moving, but it also provides a natural choke point for both sides. To cross it is to risk everything, but not crossing it is to accept defeat. Alexander knows he has no choice but to take the risk, to break the status quo, and find a way to overcome this mighty river. What happens next is nothing short of spectacular. In a move that will be remembered for centuries, Alexander orders his men to build boats, numerous, sturdy vessels that will carry the entire army across the river. In the middle of the night, under the cover of darkness, the Macedonian forces silently begin their crossing, catching King Porus and his army completely off guard. By dawn, the entire Macedonian army has crossed the Hydaspes, and Alexander has once again proven his uncanny ability to outthink and outmaneuver his enemies. The battle that follows is brutal and fast-paced, the kind of clash that feels like a collision of two worlds. You stand at the edge of the battlefield, feeling the rumble of hooves beneath your feet as Alexander's cavalry charges into the fray. The clash of metal on metal fills the air, the sound of swords striking shields, the cries of soldiers as they fight for survival. The scene is chaotic, filled with the clamor of war, and yet there is something almost poetic about it. There's a beauty in the way Alexander's forces move together as one, as though they are an extension of their leader's will. Historians still marvel at the tactical brilliance of Alexander in the Battle of the Hydaspes. He used the element of surprise to his advantage, crossing the river in secret and attacking Porus's forces before they could organize. His cavalry, led by his trusted generals, attacked with precision, enveloping the enemy from all sides. The outcome was decisive. King Porus, despite his valiant defense, was defeated, and with that victory, Alexander had reached the farthest corner of his empire. Yet, even in victory, there's a strange quietness in the aftermath. As you watch the Macedonian soldiers regroup and prepare for the next move, you notice the subtle changes in their demeanor. The excitement of battle has worn off, replaced by a growing sense of unease. The men, once eager for conquest, now seem uncertain. This victory, though monumental, feels like the last step on a journey that might not lead them to the glory they once imagined. Alexander himself is unchanged, of course. He stands tall, surveying the battlefield, his face inscrutable. To him, this victory is just another chapter in his great journey, a journey that has no end. But to the soldiers around him, the men who have followed him through endless campaigns and countless battles, this feels like a turning point. The questions are beginning to pile up. What now? Where do we go from here? How much longer can we keep this up? You can see it in their faces. The exhaustion, the weariness, the uncertainty. And as you look across the battlefield at the wounded soldiers being tended to the horses that will never ride again, the sense of finality creeps in. Alexander's army has conquered the world it knows, but it feels like they've reached the edge of that world. The endless march that seemed so promising just a few years ago is now beginning to feel like a cycle, a never-ending loop of violence and conquest with no tangible end. And yet, as always, Alexander moves forward. There is no stopping him now. The road ahead may be uncertain, but in his mind it is still his road to travel. The Battle of the Hydaspes is another victory for the Macedonian king, but in the quiet moments that follow, you can sense that this is a battle with a cost that is beginning to weigh heavily on those who follow him. The days after the Battle of the Hydaspes feel oddly quiet. The air is thick with dust, and the buzz of soldiers tending to their wounds, preparing for whatever comes next. But it's clear now, this is the turning point. There's an unease in the ranks, a subtle shift in the mood of the army. Alexander has just won one of his greatest victories, and yet, for the first time, it feels like the end of something. The soldiers are starting to look at each other differently, starting to question whether this endless war is worth it. The march to Babylon is long, and the soldiers are growing tired. They've crossed the Indus River, leaving the lands of India behind, and now they are moving westward, back into the heart of the Persian Empire. The route is familiar to them, but their minds are elsewhere, thinking of home, of the families they left behind, of the futures that may never come. The distance between them and Macedon feels like an eternity, and for the first time, you can sense that the soldiers are not just weary in body, but in spirit. As you walk through the camp, you hear snippets of conversation, voices lowered as if speaking about something forbidden. When will we return home? One soldier asks. Will we ever see Macedonia again? Another murmurs. The question lingers in the air, unanswered. There is no easy way to explain to them that this is no longer just a military campaign. This is about empire. This is about legacy, and legacy is not kind to the men who build it. Alexander, as always, remains focused on his goal. He moves ahead of the army, deep in thought, as if the weight of the world rests on his shoulders alone. He has a vision that will change the course of history. But for the first time, you wonder if that vision is beginning to cost him more than he realizes. The soldiers follow him, but their hearts are no longer fully in it. They're exhausted, and even Alexander, it seems, is beginning to feel it. Historians still argue whether it was Alexander's relentless drive or the weariness of his men that ultimately led to his decision to turn back at the banks of the Bees River. Some believe it was a strategic retreat. Others say that it was a moment of clarity for Alexander when he finally understood the limits of his empire. Whatever the reason, one thing is clear. This journey, this relentless pursuit of glory, has come to its natural end. And yet, as the army presses on toward Babylon, you know that Alexander's story is far from over. The road ahead is uncertain, but there is one thing that remains unchanged: his belief that his destiny lies in the stars, far beyond the borders of the lands he's conquered. Whether his army follows him or not, that belief will drive him to the very end. The road to Babylon is not as grand as it once seemed. The soldiers, once so eager to march towards new horizons, now walk with the weight of years pressing on them. Their faces, once full of youthful ambition, are now marked by the toll of endless marches, battles, and unyielding conquest. The journey back west has a different feeling. There's no thrill of the unknown ahead, no exciting promise of new lands to conquer. Instead, there's a quiet resignation. The men are no longer the same, and neither, it seems, is Alexander. You walk beside the army as it slowly makes its way through the dusty, barren plains. The wind, hot and dry, bites at your skin, carrying with it the faint scent of dust and distant memories. The landscape around you seems as tired as the soldiers themselves, stretching endlessly in every direction, with no sign of relief. The further west you march, the more you realize that this is not just the return from India, it's the beginning of the end of something. It is here, in Babylon, where Alexander's vision reaches its most ambitious point. Babylon, once the crown jewel of the Persian Empire, is now the prize of his own vast dominion. This city, with its ancient walls, its legendary gardens, and its unparalleled wealth, has always been a symbol of civilization itself. And it is here, in the heart of Babylon, that Alexander plans to set his mark on history. He envisions a grand city, a center of knowledge and power, where Greek and Persian cultures will blend together in harmony. You stand in the heart of Babylon now, watching as construction begins. The sounds of hammers and chisels fill the air as workmen labor to create Alexander's dream. It's an ambitious undertaking, and you can sense that the king himself is eager to see his vision realized. But there's something different about him now. There's an impatience in his eyes, a restlessness that wasn't there before. You can see it in the way he surveys the work, never satisfied, always pushing for more. It's as if he's not just building a city, he's trying to rebuild himself. As the days drag on, Alexander's health begins to fail. The long months of campaigning, the constant strain of leadership, and perhaps the weight of the empire he's built, it's all starting to catch up with him. His body, once strong and invincible, now shows signs of wear. He falls ill, and the sickness seems to come out of nowhere, striking him down with a suddenness that shocks everyone around him. His men, who have followed him so faithfully across the world, now look on with a mixture of concern and fear. This man, who has led them through countless victories, is no longer the indomitable figure he once was. He is mortal, after all. Historians still debate the cause of Alexander's death. Some suggest that he was poisoned, possibly by enemies within his own ranks, while others believe it was a natural illness, exacerbated by the physical toll of his campaigns. Regardless, the timing of his death is haunting. It comes just as he is on the verge of fulfilling his ultimate vision, a unified empire that stretches from Greece to India. His dream is within reach, but it slips through his fingers. The fever that consumes him leaves Alexander in a state of delirium, and for days he drifts in and out of consciousness. His men gather around him, unsure of what to do. The once unstoppable conqueror now lies helpless, his future uncertain. The entire empire holds its breath, waiting for the man who has changed the course of history to either rally and return to his conquests, or succumb to the very mortality he has always defied. As you stand in the quiet of the camp, you can't help but feel the weight of what's happening. The empire, so vast and so powerful, now feels fragile. It's as though Alexander himself knew this moment was inevitable, but that doesn't make it any easier. His men, who have traveled with him, fought beside him, bled for him, are left with a future they didn't bargain for. What will become of the empire now? What will become of the legacy he worked so hard to create? And then, as quickly as it all began, Alexander's life comes to a close. The great king, the conqueror of worlds, dies at the age of 32. The news spreads quickly through the camp, and the reaction is immediate: grief, disbelief, and confusion. The man who is destined to rule the known world has been taken from them. Historians have long speculated about Alexander's final moments. Some say that he named no successor, leaving the empire without a clear ruler. Others argue that his death was part of a larger plan, that he had already set the wheels of succession in motion. But the truth, like so much of Alexander's life, remains shrouded in mystery. What is certain, however, is the profound impact of his death. The empire he built so quickly and so fiercely is now without a leader, and the world holds its breath once again. As you stand there, watching the men grieve for their fallen king, you realize something important. Alexander's death marks the end of an era, but it also marks the beginning of something else. His empire, vast and sprawling as it was, will soon fracture. His generals, known as the Diadochi, will fight among themselves for control, each one eager to carve out a piece of the empire for themselves. The unity that Alexander so carefully built will crumble in the years to come, and the world will be forever changed by his ambition. For now, though the air is thick with mourning, Alexander's death, so sudden and so untimely, leaves a vacuum. The men who followed him, who trusted him, are left to pick up the pieces of an empire that may never fully come together again. In the years that follow Alexander's death, the world changes. His empire, once unified under his singular vision, fractures into pieces as his generals fight for control. The lands that were once his, stretching from Greece to the edges of India, are torn apart by power struggles, betrayals, and infighting. The great dream of a unified empire dies with its creator, and in the wake of Alexander's passing, a new world begins to take shape. You stand in the midst of this world, watching as the once mighty empire is divided among the Diadochi, the generals who served Alexander and who now seek to carve out their own realms. Ptolemy takes Egypt, Seleucus claims Syria and Mesopotamia, and Antigonus seeks to control the heart of the old empire. The once united world that Alexander built is now a patchwork of competing kingdoms, each one fighting for supremacy. Yet, despite the fragmentation of his empire, Alexander's legacy endures. His vision of a world united under Greek culture and ideals continues to spread long after his death. The Hellenistic period, which began with Alexander's conquests, continues to shape the world for centuries to come. Greek culture, philosophy, and art flourish in the lands that Alexander conquered, leaving a lasting imprint on the civilizations that follow. Even as the empire crumbles, the ideals that Alexander sought to spread live on. The cities he founded, such as Alexandria, become centers of learning, culture, and innovation. The Greek language becomes the lingua franca of the Mediterranean world, and the idea of a unified empire, though never fully realized, remains a tantalizing vision for generations to come. Historians still debate what kind of man Alexander truly was. Was he a hero, a visionary, a god, or a ruthless conqueror driven by an insatiable desire for glory? Perhaps he was all of these things, a man whose ambition knew no bounds, whose greatness and flaws were inseparable. What is clear, however, is that Alexander's influence on the world is undeniable. His conquests changed the course of history, and his legacy continues to be felt to this day. As you reflect on the life of Alexander the Great, you realize that his story is not one of simple conquest. It is a story of ambition, vision, and the complexities of power. It is the story of a man who sought to change the world, who reached the farthest corners of the earth, and whose name will forever be etched in the annals of history. And though his empire did not survive him, his vision did, lasting long after his death, continuing to inspire and shape the world for centuries to come. And as the years pass, one thing remains certain: Alexander the Great may have died young, but his story will never fade from the pages of history. It's a strange thing, the passage of time. From the moment Alexander died, the world shifted on its axis. His empire, once an unstoppable force under his hands, began to crumble as quickly as it had been built. The generals who followed him, the men who had fought beside him in every battle, found themselves at odds, each one claiming a piece of the empire, each one eager to carve out their own dominion. You stand now in the ruins of what was once the heart of Alexander's empire, Babylon, the city that he had dreamed of making the jewel of the world. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the cracked stone streets. The city feels abandoned, its former grandeur faded into the dust of history. In the distance, you can see the remnants of the grand palace that Alexander had planned to transform into a symbol of his greatness. The foundations are still there, crumbled under the weight of time and neglect. As you walk through the ancient city, you can't help but feel the weight of what has been lost. The empire, once unified under Alexander's vision, now lies in pieces. Ptolemy in Egypt, Seleucus in Mesopotamia, Antigonus in Asia Minor. The Diadochi now rule the vast territories that were once united under a single ruler. But it's a fractured world, a world where alliances shift like sand, and no one can truly claim the legacy of Alexander as their own. The armies of the Diadochi clash, and the world that Alexander had once forged now falls into chaos. The sense of unity, of a common purpose, is gone. What remains is a series of warring kingdoms, each vying for supremacy. It's a bitter irony, isn't it? The empire Alexander fought so hard to build, so fiercely to unite, is now tearing itself apart in the very struggle to hold it together. But amid the turmoil, Alexander's vision still endures. The cities he founded, the ones that bore his name, Alexandria in Egypt, Alexandria Esca in Central Asia, continue to thrive, even as the empire around them crumbles. These cities become the centers of Greek culture, learning, and trade, places where scholars and philosophers gather to exchange ideas, where Greek thought and civilization spread across the ancient world like seeds carried on the wind. It's here, in these cities, where the legacy of Alexander's conquest lives on long after the empire has fractured. The Greek language, once the language of a small city-state, becomes the lingua franca of the Eastern Mediterranean. Greek ideas of democracy, philosophy, and art continue to influence the world for centuries to come. Historians still argue about the ultimate cause of Alexander's downfall. Was it his relentless ambition, his inability to see the limitations of his empire? Or was it the sheer weight of what he had achieved, the overwhelming scale of his conquests that ultimately broke the empire apart? The truth, as with most things in history, is likely a combination of both. What is certain, however, is that Alexander's death left a void that no one could truly fill. As you stand in the ruins of Babylon, watching the last light of day fade into the horizon, you realize something important. Alexander's empire may have shattered, but his influence did not die with him. His vision, his ambition, and his dream of a world united under Greek ideals continue to shape the world, even in the face of fragmentation. The winds of change are always blowing, and the world continues to evolve. But Alexander's legacy, whether fragmented or whole, remains one of the most significant in history. His story is not just one of military conquest, but of a vision that spanned continents, of an empire that straddled two worlds, and of a man whose name will be remembered for millennia. The years pass, and the echoes of Alexander's conquests continue to reverberate through the halls of history. You stand now in the quiet ruins of one of the many cities he founded, this one far from the battlefields of the East. The stone streets are worn with age, the once grand buildings reduced to shadows of their former selves. But still, there's a sense of something enduring here, a sense that the story of Alexander, in some form, lives on. Even as his empire has fractured into pieces, the world is left with the legacy of his vision. You feel it in the scattered remnants of Greek culture that remain in every corner of the empire. In Egypt, the great library of Alexandria continues to be a beacon of learning, even if it's not the center of power that Alexander once dreamed it would be. In the far reaches of the East, where his army once marched, Greek influence mingles with local customs, creating a new cultural hybrid that will shape the future. The rulers who came after Alexander, the Diadochi, the Ptolemies, the Seleucids, may have fought for power, but they could never escape the shadow of the man who had once united the known world. The ancient world had been irrevocably changed by his conquests, and no matter how much time passed, the name of Alexander the Great would continue to resonate. It's strange, isn't it, how one man's vision could reach so far, so fast, and then, in the blink of an eye, disappear into the dust. The empire that Alexander had built was gone, but the ideas, the culture, the very essence of what he had strived for lived on. Even as his generals tore the empire apart, his legacy continued to shape the world. his name was not forgotten. It became synonymous with greatness, with ambition, with the idea that one man could shape the course of history. Historians still marvel at Alexander's ability to conquer so much in such a short time. His military genius, his charisma, and his vision made him one of the most remarkable figures in history. But they also wonder, what might have happened if he had lived longer? Would he have been able to consolidate his empire, to create the unity he envisioned? Or was it always doomed to fragment, to splinter into smaller kingdoms? Like so many empires before it, you can't help but wonder the same thing. What would have happened if Alexander had lived to see his dream fulfilled? Would the world have been different, or would it have simply shifted into a new phase of history where new leaders rose to challenge the old? As the years turn into centuries, one thing becomes clear: Alexander's story is far from over. His legacy, in whatever form it took, will continue to echo through the halls of time, inspiring generations of leaders, thinkers, and dreamers. His name will never fade from the pages of history. It will remain a testament to the power of ambition, to the drive of a man who believed that nothing was impossible. And as you stand here, in the quiet ruins of his empire, you realize that Alexander's vision, his dream of a world united under his rule, was never truly about the empire itself. It was about the idea of greatness, of pushing the boundaries of what was possible, of believing that one man could change the world. That idea, that drive to create something greater than oneself, is what endures long after the man himself is gone. The dust of the ancient world continues to settle, but the echoes of Alexander's footsteps linger, faint but undeniable. The world, once divided into city-states and small kingdoms, is now a much different place. The Greek-speaking world, once confined to the small city of Athens and its neighboring states, has stretched its influence across continents. The seeds of Hellenism, spread by Alexander's armies, his generals, and his vision, have taken root in places as far from Greece as India. You walk now through one of the cities that Alexander founded, Alexandria, perhaps, or one of the countless others that bear his name. It's a city of contrasts, ancient yet modern, Greek yet Persian, a place where cultures and ideas blend together in a way that would have been unimaginable before Alexander's conquests. In these cities, the legacy of Alexander is alive. The Greek language is spoken by people from all walks of life. Philosophy, science, and art flourish as scholars and thinkers from all corners of the empire gather to exchange ideas. The great library of Alexandria, once the heart of the intellectual world, still stands as a symbol of the knowledge and learning that Alexander sought to spread. Yet, even in this world of Hellenism, there's something else, something darker. The divisions within the empire are still felt, even though Alexander's physical empire has long since fractured. The wars of the Diadochi, the infighting among Alexander's generals have left their mark. The dream of a united empire under one ruler has faded, replaced by a patchwork of kingdoms, each with its own rulers and ambitions. And still, in the midst of it all, the idea of Alexander endures. His name is spoken with reverence, even in the cities that were not his own. His vision, though never fully realized, continues to shape the way the world thinks about empire, about conquest, and about the possibility of greatness. The world has been transformed by his actions, and even as it continues to evolve, Alexander's influence remains a constant presence. It's a curious thing, isn't it? How one man can shape the course of history. Alexander the Great, in his brief, tumultuous life, changed the world in ways that few could ever imagine. His empire may have crumbled, but his vision, his legacy, lives on. The world may have moved on, but Alexander's name will forever be etched into the annals of history. His empire may have fallen, but the idea of his greatness will endure for as long as people dream of conquering the impossible. As the years pass, the memory of Alexander the Great fades into legend. His empire may have fractured, his conquests may have been undone, but his name remains one of the most powerful in history. His journey, however short, left an indelible mark on the world. You stand now in the quiet, with the wind at your back and the stars above you. The empire that Alexander built may no longer exist, but his story, his vision, and his legacy continue to shape the world in ways we can still feel today. And as you take one last look at the world he created, you realize that the true power of Alexander's story isn't in the land he conquered or the battles he fought. It's in the idea that one person with enough drive and ambition can change the course of history. That's the real legacy of Alexander the Great. The idea that anything is possible as long as you're willing to push the boundaries of what the world thinks is possible. And with that thought, you close your eyes, feeling the quiet hum of history settle around you. The story of Alexander may be over, but his journey, like all great journeys, will never truly end.